continuing on with trying to knock off Oscar nominees. And at the beginning of the week, we had some sort of competing family members with Netflix, so I couldn't get onto Netflix. So I was going to watch Train Dreams at the beginning of the week. Couldn't jump on that at the beginning of the week. I got there, but I started the week with The Smashing Machine because it's got a Oscar nomination for makeup, which I will give it that. But all in all, Smashing Machine, I was not a fan. That is a solid 2-star film in my opinion. Now, I should be upfront to begin with. I am not a UFC fan. I know nothing about the rules. I took maybe 2 jitsu classes myself 2-3 years ago. I was immediately put in several headlocks, which was not pleasant. So I wasn't a fan of that, and can't say that I'm a fan of the sport. And I don't know that this movie does it any favors, because it is really violent and, in my opinion, really rather stupid. It is a lot of giant dudes beating the crap out of each other for reasons I can't fathom. So perhaps that is coloring my opinion to a certain degree, but there it is. But I don't think that's not the main problem with the film. The main problem with the film, in my estimation, is its lack of focus and not having an anchor. There's a lot of plot threads in this thing. You start off the film and it makes clear that he's never lost a fight, and then he loses for the first time, which that could be a good sort of driver going forward, but it's not really the driver. You've also got the drug plot line where he's on drugs, he's got to be in rehab. But that plot seems to get resolved relatively quickly over the runtime of the film. So that I can't say is the anchor. Then you got the domestic problems. Then later on in the film, the prospect of having to be in a fight with his friend. That's introduced rather late, which again, that could have been an interesting. You've got all these separate threads that in and of themselves could be interesting, and it doesn't decide on an anchor. I mean, they could in theory all be there, but what's the grounding force of the film? And I don't really think it has one, and it sort of relies a lot on sort of biopic tropes, which really gets it into trouble, because when you get super tropey in the biopic department, it has been so lampooned in comedies over and over again. Like I'm sitting there watching this movie, and particularly during the domestic strife scenes, my brain immediately went to, if you remember Walk Hard, a Dewey Cox story with John C. Reilly, and they go way over that one for the purpose of comedy, and it really is quite funny. They go way over the top with the dramatic reads, and every single scene ends with John C. Reilly destroying a room. And it's essentially, it was at the time, it was going off of Walk the Line, and you had Walk the Line and Ray, and several biopics with very, very similar threads, and that movie really effectively sort of made fun of those tropes. And this film sort of leans in on those tropes, and it's an issue because there are times where I found myself chuckling, and I'm quite sure that it was not supposed to be funny. And again, that's an issue. The other big problem in my book is the performances, and I like The Rock. He is a very charming man. He has made a lot of films that I find wildly entertaining, and it's clear with this film he's trying to be taken as a serious actor who can do Oscar caliber performances. And after watching this film, I do think he has one in him somewhere. It's just this one is not it. This film, he comes off as really, really try hard. You can see him working. You can see his acting, and when you see the acting, it sort of pulls you out of what the narrative is. And honestly, I think maybe he hewed too close to his roots doing a film about fighting. I think if he wants to do a performance that's a little that's different from the action popcorn entertainment that he usually does, hewing away from that might be the smarter decision. This one wasn't it, and it's not. I did not think he's not bad. You can just see him. You can see him working, and when it comes to this kind of performance, you don't want to see the actor working. Lincoln, for example, and this is sort of the extreme example. Anything with like Daniel Day-Lewis is a unicorn, but he disappears into Abraham Lincoln, and I didn't feel like The Rock disappeared into his character. I could still see The Rock. I could see The Rock working and trying real hard, and that's kind of not what you want for this film. And the real disappointment, oddly enough for me, was Emily Blunt. She is fantastic in most of the things that she's done. Outside of this film, I can't really point out a bad Emily Blunt performance. This was a bad performance. It's way over the top, and I would assume, given all of her body of work and how great she's been in so many films, she clearly makes smart acting choices. This has got to be a directing and editing choice. It's just so they crank it up to level 11, and most of her purpose in the film is it's this domestic, it's a lot of the domestic fighting stuff, and all of it is insanely over dramatic to the point of parody, and I was laughing at it more than connecting with it. And I would guess that's directing and editing. Maybe there were other takes that were not used that were a little bit more toned down. And Benny Safdie, he directed and edited it. Maybe he didn't pick those takes. It just did it. It was way, way, way overdone. And again, chuckling where I should not have been chuckling. And it's too bad, because I do think it was shot very well. It's got sort of a quasi-documentary manner in which it's shot. The camera work feels really grounded, and that was very, very good. And the makeup was pretty was pretty solid as well. So that did get a nomination for that, which makes sense. But it also makes sense that this was essentially ignored in every other category, because it's basically a weak tea biopic. It's a weak tea biopic that leans into tropes and winds up more comical than dramatic, and that's an issue. So again, solid 2 stars. I suppose maybe, if I'm being generous, if you're really, really into UFC, maybe there's something that you as a fan of the sport are seeing that I'm not seeing. But it was dull, uninteresting, and I can't recommend it. I can't recommend it. At the end of the day,